come on Iwa-chan. Hurry up. Yeah, I'm coming. You know the stars won't run away from you? But the night will be over faster than you can say. Oikoa Toru is a goddamn genius and talented setter, so get your ass over here. Why on earth should I say that? Oikoa turned to Iwaizumi, wearing the most mischievous grin on his face as he winked at him. Because it's true. Iwaizumi giggled and shook his head. He jogged over to Oikoa and then dropped down on the grass next to him. They sat on top of a hill, somewhat secluded from the village where they lived in, and they both leaned back to look up at the sky. It was a clear summer night, the air raw and refreshing, a light summer breeze brushing through their hair and the stars twinkling down on them, gracing the velvety sky. Iwaizumi and Oikoa laid on the hillside beneath the stars, reflecting the sparkle that gleamed down on them. The only noises to be heard were those of insects scrabbling and chirping, and of the leaves in the trees and bushes being blown against the branches because of the faint wind. It was warm, comforting, beautiful. Whoa. The two friends fell silent, taken in by the beauty of the night sky above them. Oikoa's eyes were wide open, as if he was absorbing the glint of the stars. Iwaizumi turned his head to watch his best friend. He smiled softly and let the red sprout in his cheeks, seeing how fascinated Oikoa appeared. So admirable. So pretty. There was something soothing about the atmosphere, something peaceful. They could escape all the rush. At that moment there was only the two of them, nature and the bright stars above them. The land was untouched, it was also tranquil. Fascinating how the night can be so calming and beautiful, don't you think? Iwaizumi admired the brunette man for a moment longer, before turning his head back to the stars and taking a deep breath. So I guess you can see now why I like coming here? Oikoa smiled, his eyes shining, and his heart beating a little faster. Yeah. He bent his legs and folded his hands on his stomach, snuggling a little more into the oversized sweater he'd stolen from Iwaizumi just before they left. Iwaizumi stretched and then clasped his hands behind his head. He smiled faintly, happy at the fact of being here alone with Toru. Oikoa's eyes roamed over the vast sea of stars above them, fascinated by the way something could be so beautiful. He raised his arm into the air and pointed to a white star that was almost directly above them. Look Iwa, how bright it is. Is that the North Star? Iwaizumi smiled fondly. Oikoa's excitement was absolutely heartwarming. He shook his head slightly before he began to answer. No, that's actually Venus. Oikoa immediately straightened up in shock and stared down into Iwaizumi's face. Huh? Venus? Like the planet Venus? Iwaizumi's eyes sparkled, covering his small laugh with his fist that escaped his lips as Oikoa replied to him in such dismay. The spiky-haired man chuckled. Yeah. At this time you can see Venus quite well with your bare eyes. In a few weeks, that won't be possible anymore. Whoa. Oikoa was totally amazed, fascinated about it, because never in his life would he have thought to be able to see any other planet with his own eyes besides the Earth, on which they obviously lived, the moon and the sun. The setter lay down again, but this time he placed his head on Iwaizumi's stomach. The spiker automatically let his arm move to Oikoa's body, so that his hand rested on top of the brunette's on his tummy and their fingers interlocked. This was not an unusual gesture for them, they did this often. After all, they were best friends, and among good friends you just do that sometimes, right? If we can see Venus, can we see Mercury as well? Technically yes, but we should have looked for it in the evening twilight. Now it's too late for that, unfortunately. Oh, too bad. Iwaizumi tilted his head and stared at Oikoa. He smiled weakly and squeezed his hand briefly. Hey Oikoa, you know, on really good days you can sometimes even see Mars or even more distant planets like Jupiter or Saturn. Oikoa's eyes widened and sparkled. He turned his head to Iwaizumi and looked at his best friend full of euphoria. Really? Iwaizumi hummed and smiled. He now took his other hand from behind his head and ruffled Oikoa's hair, causing the brunette to close his eyes briefly and smile at the motion. Hey Iwa-chan, will you show me the planets someday? Of course. Oikoa's smile widened, happy to learn even more about the galaxy. He tilted his gaze back up to the starry sky and absorbed the beauty above them. Looking down at him, Iwaizumi noticed how Oikoa's eyes lit up at the prospect and his soul glowed. Resisting the urge to kiss the smile off his face, Iwaizumi began pointing and describing some constellations he knew about, hoping to keep Oikoa happy. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 listened intently as he did so. Do you see the stars forming a W? Yes. That's 𝒂𝒕𝒉𝒆𝒓. There are an especially large number of stars here because the constellation is located in the Milky Way. The star in the middle is pointing towards the North Star. IwaOi explained, gesturing in the direction. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 nodded with widely open observant eyes as he watched the cluster of stars in the sky. Their eyes widened a little more as the first shooting star literally fell down on them. Look Iwa. Quick, make a wish. IwaOi grinned. He had actually been waiting for this all evening. The Perseids, a recurring meteor stream, had been announced, and in this night the star shower was to be seen particularly well. Since the weather was cooperating, and IwaOi knew how happy 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 would be about seeing this, he really wanted to share this spectacle with him. And here they were lying right now, witnessing one shooting star after the next descending towards them. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 turned to the side and stared up at IwaOi, a happy grin chiseled into his face. IwaOi widened his eyes and straightened up by now, which made 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 sit up as well. No. Keep your wish to yourself 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔. But no. Have you already forgotten how well that worked out last time? Last time 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 had seen a shooting star, he had wished for their team to make it to the nationals. As soon as he had made the wish, he immediately called IwaOi to tell him about it. Well, we all know whether the wish came true or not. Please Iwa, I can't keep it to myself. Knock it off. Iwa, please no. You can tell me once your wish has come true, but before that I don't want to hear about it. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 sucked in a breath of air, ready to counter it again, when he finally just frowned, folded his arms, and pouted. IwaOi snickered, rolled his eyes, and then lunged at 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔, tickling him all over his body to make the pout disappear from his lips. No. Iwa, stop. No. IwaOi didn't let go of 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔, tackling him down until the brunette had no strength left to fight back from laughing so hard. Tears popped up in the corners of his eyes. He sighed, completely exhausted from IwaOi's attack. The spiker lay back on his back and pulled 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 into his arms. The setter also laid on his back, resting his head on IwaOi's shoulder, half snuggling against IwaOi's chest. Their eyes flitting back into the night sky as IwaOi pointed to more stars and continued explaining the constellations while holding 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 tightly in his grip with his other arm. See the 4 stars there that form the Big Dipper? IwaOi began. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 listened carefully, but his gaze drifted away from the spectacle above them and fixed on what he found most beautiful just now. Fixed on IwaOi. His eyes trailed over every inch of his body, admiring how the moonlight flattered his features, highlighting the contours of his face. IwaOi was even more handsome than ever before, and 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 couldn't help but blush the hell out of it. IwaOi tried not to digress from his own explanations, but the piercing looks of the brunette in his arms were a bit distracting to say the least. Eventually he interrupted himself, took a deep breath, and then tilted his head to look down at 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔. Keeping their faces close together, he met the setter's dreamy gaze, which deepened the red on his cheeks even more. Fortunately, it was dark outside. IwaOi stared into 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔's big brown eyes that he had fallen in love with so long ago. He joined the staring contest with the thought that T could play this game, and he would surely not lose. Looking at him like this, lying in his arm in the moonlit darkness, he discovered what the night revealed to him when the day kept it hidden. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔's features looked even softer now, his eyes sparkled, as if he had actually absorbed the vast starry sky, and the shadow of a smile crept onto his face, followed by an increasingly blush. You know Hajime, this whole night is so magnificent, I can't help but be astonished. 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 infected IwaOi with his smile. I'm glad you like it. Yes, but as beautiful as the stars may seem tonight, the one who outshines them all is you. And if anyone had thought that 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔's cheeks couldn't get any redder, they were proven wrong at that very moment. Before 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 even had a chance to think about what he had just said, the words had already slipped past his lips. His heart was racing. He felt the butterflies buzzing in his stomach. IwaOi's eyes widened in disbelief at what he had just heard. His eyebrows moved upwards, and the air was stuck in his throat. It took him a moment to respond, as 𝒑𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔 caught him completely off guard. I am well. IwaOi mumbled the words to himself, totally stunned to get the appropriate words out of his mouth. He was more flustered by Ikoa's compliment than he liked to be. Ikoa chuckled, never taking his eyes off IwaOi, and straightened up to lie half on top of him. He propped his elbows on Iwa's chest so he could put his head in his palms while IwaOi's arm rested on Ikoa's back. You aren't so bad yourself. Stupid. Not that bad? What in the world had he been thinking? Stupid. I'm not so bad myself. Ikoa raised an eyebrow while the corners of his mouth twitched. He closed his eyes as he burst out laughing, knowing full well that he had caught IwaOi by surprise more than he could ever imagine. He started, but was interrupted as IwaOi pulled Ikoa's arms to him and let his lips meet the brunette man's soft ones. The chaste kiss didn't last long, but it was the first of many. This time Ikoa leaned down to IwaOi and took control. He embraced the spiker's face while IwaOi ran his fingers through Ikoa's hair. Eventually they stopped. Iwa was the first to break away, panting and gasping for air. They looked deeply and lovingly into each other's eyes, befuddled by the kiss and the scenery that surrounded them. Ikoa nudged his nose against IwaOi's, which made them both smile. Hey. IwaOi brushed the strands of hair from Ikoa's face and admired the man in his arms. How gorgeous he was. Guess I'm not that bad, huh? Brave Ikoa, no one said you were a good kisser. Ikoa gasped. He placed his hands each next to IwaOi's head and propped himself up on them slightly, then looked at his best friend's face in shock. Rude. I could have sworn that. Before Ikoa could speak any further, IwaOi pulled him back down to him and let their lips reconnect. The tenderness and love that was in that kiss made the hearts of both men thrive. As IwaOi slowly released the kiss, his smirk grew, and he whispered against Ikoa's lips, hungry to get more of them. You're even better. At this point, there was really no way to describe how red Ikoa's face was. He dropped his head forward, embracing IwaOi and burying his face in the crook of his neck, totally flattered by the words of the spiky-haired man beneath him. IwaOi laughed. The deep, warm laugh only melted Ikoa's heart even more. Damn. When did he fall so hard for IwaOi? You're stupid, Iwa. Ikoa murmured against IwaOi's neck, his voice muffled. IwaOi grinned and wrapped his arms around Ikoa's back, hugging him tightly to feel the brunette's closeness and warmth. Stupid for not kissing you much earlier. Yes. Ikoa lifted his head and looked IwaOi in the eyes, half annoyed and half amused. His hair was a mess, completely tousled and sticking out in all directions. IwaOi brushed some strands out of his face again and noticed how heated the setter's face was. Seems like IwaOi's eyes hadn't fooled him. Ikoa's cheeks were red as hell. Come here. IwaOi fixed their positions so that Ikoa was now lying sideways in IwaOi's arms again, looking up at the sky. His head laid between his arm and his chest. His hands were wrapped around IwaOi's torso, snuggling tightly against him, draping himself in his warmth. IwaOi held Ikoa tightly, giving him a quick gentle kiss on the forehead before he himself was drawn back into the spell of the stars. He smiled, happy as never before. You know. Ikoa snuggled a little closer to IwaOi and watched the stars that were now falling on them every second. My wish has come true, Iwa-chan. IwaOi hummed. Is that so? Yeah. IwaOi placed another kiss on Ikoa's temple and played with his wavy brown hair, making the brunette sleepy and causing his eyelids to grow heavy. IwaOi whispered, mine too. As the night drew on, the two of them rested in each other's arms on the hill, captivated by the twinkling starlit sky and the many shooting stars passing overhead. No words were exchanged, there didn't need to be, as their attention was solely on each other and the spectacle above them. I love you, Toru. Ikoa buried his face in IwaOi's neck, breathing in his familiar comforting scent. He smiled sleepily, but happily. I love you too, Hajime. Eyelids heavy with sleep they drifted off, never letting go of their embrace as the silky night sky showered them with giant shooting stars and the moonlight sparkled down on them. They had each other, and everything was perfect.